Good morning and welcome once again to this webinar hosted by Data Capture Solutions in our series of webinars Empower Accounts Payable Through Automation, to be presented in a few short moments once again by our own Rachel Cole. Thanks to Rachel for once again bringing us her experience in improving business processes. This focus this morning is on achieving financial control and visibility with automation, and it is expected to take place over about the next half an hour or so, give or take a few minutes though, because it does include Rachel taking us through a demo of Invoice Process Intelligence Platform, which usually generates a bit of interest. And with that in mind, I should direct your attention just for a moment to the questions box, which you'll see probably on the right side of your screen at the moment, which you can use to pose any questions that you would like me to put on to Rachel on your behalf at the end of the webinar. So that is there for your use, and I'll come to those and put questions to Rachel at the Q&A bit at the end. So, without further ado then, to commence this webinar, Achieving Financial Control and Visibility with Automation, I hand you over to Rachel Cole. Good morning, Rachel.
Morning, James, and thank you very much for the introduction. So as James said, today's session is going to be focusing on achieving financial control and visibility with invoice automation. Now, we have a rough agenda for you today just to guide us through today's session. So we'll give you a little bit of an insight about who we are and why we would be best placed to partner for this type of solution. We will also run through the changing priorities of accounts payable departments and why analytics is becoming more and more prevalent for those particular departments. We'll also then discuss around the value to the business and how you can actually really improve on the current platforms that you may already have or that you're looking to implement. We'll then go through some of the workflow tools. Some of you may already be automating this, but we're just going to focus on this for a second, and then look at the analytics and the demo. So to kick off, some of you may have been on our session last week, so for those of you, I do apologise if we're going over our ground, but for the people that weren't, we were founded in 1996 as a document management provider. We had a profitable and successful partnership with Nearpost, and they acquired us back in March 2014, which gave us a great synergy. They handle many outbound going solutions and we handle the inbound, so it made a perfect cyclical partnership. So we develop our own software and also integrate and sell best-of-breed third-party software and hardware solutions. And what I mean by that is predominantly Koufax. So we're a diamond partner of Koufax. This is an annual accreditation, so we have to meet certain amounts of revenue, certain skill sets, levels of training, and we have to adhere to this on an annual basis to maintain that accreditation. You see the other logos on the screen there. You've got Mail Manager, FileStore EDM, and FileStore BPM. All proprietary pieces of software that are written here at DCS in-house by our technical team. And that gives us the great benefit of being able to analyse these and analyse your requirements and then marry them together. Now, we've been a leading outsourced service provider for invoice and finance-related solutions for quite many years now, and as you can see, that over 50% of our outsourced service contracts are actually invoice and finance related. Why am I telling you this? Well, that basically puts us in a best place to try and advise you and work alongside you to help build these type of solutions within your business. You may not be looking to outsource them, but we do have the benefit of that outsourced knowledge to then feed back into your internal processes, whether it be on-premise or outsourced. So that's a little bit about us. So moving on, the changing priorities of accounts payable. So what you cannot improve, you cannot measure. Many people are looking at more and more about capturing the information, how to reduce the manual effort that's involved with that. But actually, when you get to the very other end of the process, you then need to look at how you're going to use that information. You've now cleaned it up, you've now reduced the manual errors that's involved, but what do you do with all of this data? How do you use that to make the decisions within your business? And this is becoming more and more prevalent. So we'll see here that it says AP efficiently managed process, which includes visibility, upcoming supplier payments, can help with deciding which early payment discounts to pursue, as well as provide more data points to create richer financial forecasts. What does that mean? Well, effectively, it means that if you have greater visibility over your cash flow, you can then make bigger decisions around the strategy of your company, knowing that where the cash will be to utilise at any one point. So if you see there in the bottom chart that we have, the last webinar we covered reducing the processing costs. So, like I said earlier, about the manual entry, the double handling of invoices, things like that. Today we're going to focus much more on improved reporting and analytics around that. So once you've got that automated process in place, how do we extract that information and use it for further benefit? Now that leads us on to the challenges of accessing that information. So you'll see here on our graph that 46% of people said they had the inability to forecast their cash flow and they could only provide a rough estimate. Now many of you may be sitting there saying, well, yeah, we're in a similar situation. Cash flow is obviously critical, as you all know. So being able to look at that flow and understand where that money is going in and out and at what point is key. You'll also see there that 10% of people actually fall short of auditors' requirements. Again, the compliance element is a key issue. Being able to demonstrate a robust and solid technology platform that feeds all the way through your process, interweaving and providing data at each of the points is critical. And auditors actually love it. So ultimately, to have a best-in-class accounts payable department, you need to understand about the cash flow, you need to be able to demonstrate to the auditors, and more than 4 times the rate of visibility in overall organisational cash flows. 13 days lower payable outstanding rates on this, and 61% lower invoicing processing costs. So moving into an automated gives you that best-in-class process. So some of you that were on this session last week will recognise this slide. So you'll see here that you've got the value to the customer and then the process. So many of you will be entering into the world of document capture, extracting the information, recognising that data and validating it. So you might be doing capture to archive at this initial stage, or you may be capturing to an initial process. So you may be scanning those documents, retrieving them from email or EDI, and feeding them into the process and validating. What we're going to talk about today is actually the workflow and the rules management, and also the business intelligence piece. So what that will enable us to do is, again, take that next step in the process and push that down an automated route. So how do we send these invoices around the business? How do we monitor who's got what, when and where? And ultimately, how do we report on it? So workflow and rules management. So workflow automation. Well, why automate it? Well, it's a fairly self-explanatory conversation, really, but we'll go through some of the points. So multiple formats and decentralizing receipt. So again, many people have invoices that come directly to them personally rather than the AP team. It wastes resource time by doing that. There's a large amount of data and captured and manual tasks involved. It's a lengthy process. It causes delays, high processing costs, and general disorganisation, really. So these are all challenges. If you imagine a scenario, you'll have an invoice received. It may be receipted by the finance team in the finance system. However, it then has to go back out to the business for approval if you're not running a purchase order system. Now, that can end up with various different challenges that come up. It could get lost. It might sit on somebody's desk. They might be on leave. They might be off sick. We have no visibility of the exposure financially to the business of all of these invoices floating around the business. The answer to that is twofold, really. You basically sign in with design a standard invoice processing procedure. So map out your authorization matrix. That's the first step. Automate the invoice procedures and workflows. So once you've mapped out that matrix, you then automate that procedure. You can then centralize the receipt and the processing of invoices in and out, and then you can integrate with the other line of business systems. By doing all of these steps, hopefully you will aim to be more rounded in your automated flow. So you'll see here we've got the first 2 steps is capture and extract, and then you've got review and resolve and coding and approvals. Now this piece is usually where the documents go awry, and this bit is usually where we need to provide greater analytics and insights to take greater control of that step. And then finally the payment and auditing. And again, that auditing element is key for the analytics piece. you'll see here all formats and media are accepted on the capture. You've got market-leading intelligence recognition in KTM, which is our Koufax transformation module that we utilise for this type of solution. You've got powerful validation, which is great. So then again, you're making sure that the correct information is being sent around the business within the workflow tool. You've got highly granular role-based security, again, so you're making sure the invoices are being seen by the correct people and not by the incorrect people. Then feeding through, you've got proven best practice in this type of solution. It's fully configurable, and it's not just documents or invoices. It can also be other types of things, you know, that gets fed through and reviewed. And then finally, it integrates into your system. So real time for Oracle, SAP, and any other solution that we might have. And the final point there is a single source of truth, and this is kind of the holy grail for accounts payable, is where do we find that information? Many of you will associate with that, where's that supplier invoice, who signed this off, when was it signed off? That single point of truth is where we're trying to aim to get to. So the file store BPM tool is how we implement this type of solution really with our customers. It's heavily customizable, so it works with your business workflows. We don't try and drive you down a route that suits us. It will suit you, and we will match it to suit you. It's a secure system, however, yet it's still web-based. So it gives you the benefit of accessibility, but it also allows you to be as secure as possible. Accessibility via mobile devices means that you can access it by looking on your mobile, on your tablet, or any other sort of mobile device that you may have, which means yourself quite simply. So it empowers you as a customer rather than relying on a technical team to make those changes. This screen here is just a little insight into how the actual screen will look for coding. Now, this is just one view. You'll see that there's various different buttons along the top, and these are all customizable and interchangeable. It's color coded. Again, this can fit in with your corporate branding, and it's just a general look and feel of what it looks like. But you'll see here that it's a single invoice view, so they deal with one at a time. It allows for validation and coding, so the coding can either be driven by the invoice team prior to approval or actually by the approvers themselves. And the ability to move these on within the workflow is held. So if somebody's on leave, they can move forward. However, if they're not sure that it's their cost code, they can then feed that note back, changing the cost code. Or if they don't have visibility and access to those cost codes, they can just feed those notes back to the team to then reroute it to the correct department. Now, ultimately, the benefits of all of those are obvious, I hope, but you increase the processing speed, you increase the visibility, you reduce those processing costs and the exposure to the business, and you get greater control. Now, by looking at these, you can see where your invoices are, who's signing them off. You get better data quality, and you optimize the cash management. Where is our exposure to the business? Where are these invoices? How much are they, and when are they going to be due? And you get ultimately real-time AP performance management. So that leads us on to the analytics and reporting. Now, the challenges around analytics and reporting is that the data is everywhere. So you may not just have it all held in one system. You may be utilizing a finance system such as Sage, maybe Aggresso, Oracle, SAP, but you may also have a customer management system which holds the contract data. You may also have a system that holds certain billing information, certain contract rates, but there may be several systems that this data is held on. It's distributed across multiple environments. Again, with more and more people working from home and being mobile, having a physical paper process requires a physical person to be present. If you take this to a digital platform, you mitigate that need for them to be there right at that time to sign off that invoice. And then the increased complexity of business processes. Again, we're becoming more and more dynamic in the way that we work, but more and more complex to try and meet the ever-growing challenges within our businesses. Now the solutions around these challenges are really sort of there to be demonstrated. Customizable dashboards, real-time and on-demand information, giving you that access when you need it, where you need it. Being able to access consistent and accurate data and metrics. Being able to see the trends and the patterns and see the peaks and the troughs in your businesses over a set amount of time. And that could be as little as a day-to-day, or it could be something from month to month, year to year. And then insight into the business processes themselves. Are they efficient? Are they working? Can we tweak them and refine them to make them even more effective and push those productivity levels even harder? So what are we going to see today? So we're going to see some process metrics. So this type of metric is things around invoice processes. So how many invoices did we process today? How long did it take to process those invoices? And which particular users or clerks were most productive? We're then going to look at some content metrics. So, what is my cash position? Cash flow is king, as we say. How many early discounts did I achieve, and what's my average creditor days? Now, again, that information might be available from your finance system, but probably not as a more rounded picture like we're going to show you today. And then finally, process intelligence. And this is one that usually gets missed with BI tools, is why were the process steps skipped? Were they skipped? Is there a valid for that? What process paths did the invoices actually follow? You can see if they missed a step, there might have been a legitimate reason why, and you can drill down to that very quickly. And then what is the quality of my overall process? Is there ways of improving it? And then all of those come together to give you true operational process intelligence and give you that full oversight. So we're going to now launch into the demo, which will just take a second here. So while I open that up, I just want to sort of run through the interaction and an introduction, into this demo. So this platform will act as an overarching BI tool. It reaches into other lines of business systems and gathers data to present back in a set of visual dashboards. The Insight solution, as we see here on the screen, is based in a web browser, meaning it's easy to deploy, and it's also accessible from tablets, phones, and other mobile devices. Ultimately, it gives you the answers to the questions you really want to know from anywhere you want to know them. So let's say I'm an payable manager or a finance director. What this solution will offer me is a true picture of what's going on in my accounts payable process right now in real time. Now, these dashboards also give me insight into historical information, allowing me to observe and interrogate the trends and patterns over time. So it starts to allow me to build a picture of what's going on, is there peaks and troughs in my business, and I can then be reactive. So for instance, what happened yesterday versus the day before, or this month compared to last month. So it allows me to have visibility of not just process metrics, but also i.e. number of invoices, how many documents did we scan, but also the contents as well. So how many suppliers didn't quote the correct PO number, how many suppliers didn't match the original order value, so things like that. So with this information, I can then manage my operation a lot more tightly and be able to achieve results a lot quicker. So first of all, we'll go over to the overview screen. Now, starting at this, it's designed to give you a real-time view of the top key information, preventing you from having to search your other dashboards and other systems. It presents it at one single source, and it's presented to you straight away on the screen. So we'll see here that you have typical things like how many invoices have been processed, invoice count, invoice paid within terms, percentage of early payment discounts captured, and duplicate invoices. So again, a quick wash of information that we can see there. Now these dashboards can obviously be customized if you want to measure different metrics, but those are usually the key headlines that we want to follow. Now moving along here, we have the payment costs versus discounts by employees. Now what this is showing us is by individual AP clerk, we can see who is leveraging the early discounts and who is avoiding the late penalties. And we can start to see the individual performance for these clerks. Moving on down to this screen here below, we have planned spending versus unplanned spend by department. Now we can see here that ultimately we have some peaks and troughs, and we have some clear items we might want to address. So what we might want to do is drill down into this further. So if you see, if I drill down into here, it will give me a greater insight, and we can actually see that HR have had a spike in spending. Now this could have been completely unavoidable. It may be something that they were expecting, However, it's something that I can quite easily interrogate and go back into and analyse. I might want to just go back to them and have a quick conversation and say, look, you know, I just need to encourage you again and reiterate that we do have a purchase order system in place. Can you please adhere to it? Because we've seen a spike in your unplanned spending. So that just, again, gives me that information to make those decisions, have those conversations. Moving on, we've got the queues by activity time. So this solution will allow me to analyse the live bottlenecks. And what this dashboard's doing is it's showing me the process right now. So I don't want to find out at the end of the week that I've got a bottleneck. I want to find out on the Tuesday when it's actually happening. I want to ideally find out even before it's happening. And what we can do with this dashboard here is monitor what's going on at each step of that process. So you'll see here that mailbag opening is actually running okay. It's got a green indicator, which to me means it's okay, and I'm comfortable with that. Moving through to the capture process, we've got the scan, the transformation module as we spoke about earlier, and the export. Again, that's slightly slowing down, but it's not too much of a concern for me now because it's in the amber. However, the matching and the validation piece here and the approval process is starting to become a real issue. So I can start to analyse that. Now, what I can do as a manager is I can even set email alerts to say that when, say, for instance, approval or validation is slowing down to a certain threshold, I want to be alerted. I want to be proactive. I want to manage my process intelligently. So overall, that gives me that control again over the certain processes and being able to make decisions as and when they need to be made rather than retrospectively. So in summary, this screen here is just a sort of snapshot of what's going on and why it's going on. And as a business manager, it's an AP manager, financial director, it's a key screen. It shows a mixture of content metrics as well as process metrics. So the information about the invoices and also about the process that they're following. But what it isn't showing us on this screen is actually process intelligence. Now, a great example of process intelligence and a KPI that many companies follow is turnaround time. So how long did it take to process an invoice from end to end? So if I go into this screen here, it will start to show us what is happening during the process, the quality of the process and the steps that are being taken. So just to talk you through this step here, so we've got the mailbag here. Now it says mailbag, however this could be email inbox, it could be EDI. So this is where we receive the information. It feeds through into the capture. So again, that's being captured, images are cleaned up, and then they're passed through to extraction. And the extraction is then going to be taking off the key data that is configured to your individual business needs, and then feeding through into the validation. And it's validating back and forth with your systems. And that might not just be your finance system. It might be your CRM system. It might be other systems that you want to integrate with. Now you'll see here a portion of them are moving into quality control, and that quality control is key. So that's ensuring that everything that's going through is correct, and a portion of those gets fed through and eyeballed by a physical person, and also anything that it's not confident with. So if the system's not confident on any of the matches that we've configured, it would feed through into that process. But if it's confident, it passes off into export and then into matching. Now it will match against a purchase order should you be utilising a PO process. If it finds one, great, it moves through into the release for payment. If it doesn't, it then feeds it into this automated workflow we were talking about. So it will be received, it will be passed through into the approval process and either rejected or accepted and coded. Now if it's accepted and coded, released for payment, paid into your ERP system, and ultimately archived for future search and retrieval. And again, if it's rejected, the reason is captured, fed through into the archive for search and retrieval later. So just a bit about the actual product on this screen here. So you'll see that we've got some numbers here in these blue boxes. These numbers relate to the exact documents that are going through in this live real-time view. But what's more interesting is these little boxes here. Now these boxes in the top left and the bottom right indicate documents that have flown out through the process but not followed the correct path. This process here is showing our best practice, but these documents aren't following it. So what I can do is I can go, well actually, I can see 20 documents here that have gone straight from the process into coding, bypassing any approval. So if I click and drill down, I can see that, as we'd expect to see, level 1 approved, level 2 and level 3. I can also see that there's some documents that are coming straight out of the export process without being spotted by anybody. Now I want to see why that's happening and who's authorising these to go through. So I click on. I can see clearly that there's an AP clerk here. That actually with this particular clerk I may want to address a training issue. I may want to even do some further investigation. There potentially might be fraudulent activity going on. Ultimately, I wouldn't have been able to see this information overall without having this type of tool in place. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look into the accounts payable process here. So if we click into this dashboard here, this will give us more content metrics. So this is more about what the invoices are doing and what's in them. So again, we have a little overview screen. So we have a percentage of straight-through processing. We have a percentage of invoices that are overdue. We have a percentage of electronic invoices and a percentage of non-purchase order invoices. And this metric is quite key because if you are trying to instill a PO process within your business, you want to be able to reel that number off as a daily metric. Instill it in your staff, instill it in your teams and the other departments around the business. We've also got the total invoice amount spent by a department. Again, just a quick oversight on that and an insight to what's being spent by what department. Also, you'll see here, quite key, that we have average creditor days by supplier. Now, most of us work with our suppliers to try and optimise the early payment discounts, and realistically, if they're not offering one of those, we want to avoid the late penalties. Now, a proportion of these will be unavoidable, but what we can do is see how many creditors we've got and the average time that it takes to pay them. Now, if we've got SLAs in place, it's a good place to go and have a look and make sure that we're meeting those. And then we've got invoice count by department. Now, this gives us an idea as to how many invoices are coming through the departments and which ones are the most busiest. Do we need to put more staff on that particular department? Are they departmentally siloed? Do we need to make sure that we spread our team across? So again, it's about the resource planning. So if we have a look at the cash management, so as we've been speaking about, cash flow is important. We can now look on this screen that we have the invoice value due by a department. But what we've got here, which is quite key, is the overall unprocessed liability. Now, this is the piece that we were discussing earlier, where you have invoices that are around the business that are due to be signed off and approved. So therefore, they're a cash liability waiting to go through. However, you're not sure where they are. Now, you can see here quite clearly that HR is the key department, really, but we know that now. Before, if you had a manual process, where would this information be coming from? How would we know these numbers? We wouldn't. And this is why this BO tool is particularly powerful. We'll also see here that we have high value invoices due this week. So this is again making sure that we're not getting these late penalties. And I can click on this and I can actually filter by the suppliers and by the invoices that have these levied against them. So I can see these fees here and I can say, right, we need to prioritise these and chase them through the authorised process. But overall, you'll see that these dashboards are all configurable, but it's all great insight. It doesn't necessarily have to be just into your finance system. This could be integrating into all the different scanning platforms, into your finance systems, into your CRM systems, to give you overall control and visibility of your business. Now, I won't go through any more today because this was just an insight, but I hope you've seen how powerful this tool can be. So, I'd like to thank you on that note and feed through to any questions. I'll pass you back to my colleague James, who will take the questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, we've got a couple of questions come in. Something that you've sort of partially addressed, but I'll read the question verbatim. Does the dashboard link into your SAP system, i.e., could I click on the areas of overspend and see the invoices related to this? So can you drill down to specific invoices causing overspend?
In essence, yes. So this all depends on how you're capturing your invoices. But if you're capturing your invoices with line level extraction, what you can do is you can actually pin down to the specific invoice number that is called that's showing the overspend, and you can filter. Now, it's difficult to say which particular invoice is taking you over the spend, but you'll be able to see by department. But yes, we can do that. If you bear with me 2 seconds, I will go back into the demonstration and I can try and show you through this. So if we're talking about overspend, we can go into here and we can look at invoice processing, and we can look at total amount of invoices processed by an employee, but we can also look at number of total invoice processes here, daily throughput, and we can click into this and it starts to give you filters. So you can filter these by business unit, by month, by invoice type. So again, you have further granularity on this. So in answer to that, yes, it does, and SAP is one of those systems that we do work with.
And another question here, are you able to split invoice costs into various departments?
Yes, definitely. So as you've seen, that a lot of these dashboards are broken down by department and by clerk. So you'll see here, if we go back to this process overview, that actually it's split out here by employee, but it's actually split here by department. So you can see the planned spending versus unplanned spending, but there's no reason why this couldn't be any other type of data that you wanted broken down by department. Again, these dashboards are configured to exactly how you want to see the data. If you have internal reports that have been developed over time, don't change your reports. Let's customize the system to match those reporting requirements.
And finally, question, do we need Koufax scanning before this analytics platform? The question doesn't actually say whether they've got it or not, but yeah, do we need Koufax scanning before using this analytics platform?
So the answer is ideally you would have. You'd be capturing that information, because the more data that you have to interrogate and present in the dashboards, you can. But if you're utilising another scanning platform, or if you're utilising another process, you can put this in place. The richer the data set that you have to interrogate, the better the analytics is going to be. And Koufax obviously have designed this tool, so you work alongside their capture and KTM tools. However, if you have a scanning process already in place through another provider, there's no reason why you couldn't purchase this and add it in. It's an agnostic tool. It doesn't necessarily need to be a Koufax platform that it's feeding into or out of.
Okay, that concludes the questions that we've had. I reckon there will probably be more, probably within 5 or 10 minutes of this call being finished. But for those of you who do have any questions or would like to follow up on this, do please feel free to contact Rachel or indeed the rest of the team here at DCS. And thank you to all attendees, and we wish you a very good rest of the day.